Mic'd up.
Welcome everybody to Hall of Fame Conversations on Mic'd Up Social presented by Zenny. My name is John Rager. I'm a PJ member and broadcaster. And on behalf of Mic'd Up, this is brought to you by the Florida Sports Hall of Fame, celebrating enshrined members of sports since 1961. And today's guest is an incoming class of 2024 Florida Sports Hall of Famer. We're going to hold this induction enshrinement in October in Orlando. So we're going to have a wonderful time, and I'd like to introduce a longtime UF athletics trainer and a legend in this particular endeavor when it comes to sports and athletics and health of training both men and women. Welcome to Hall of Fame Conversations and on Mic'd Up. Chris Patrick, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Appreciate the invitation.
Well, I was reading your resume and it's a mile long. So why don't you give us the 100-yard version of your career for our listeners?
Well, I originally started out at the University of Tennessee as a student athletic trainer and ended up finishing there, went into the service for a short period of time. I went to graduate school at Eastern Kentucky State College, which is now Eastern Kentucky University. Applied for athletic training jobs, and they weren't nearly as plentiful in those days as they are now. I got, I think it was 64 rejection letters for jobs, so that was not good. And I ended up in a high school situation. I was teaching 8th grade science. I was an assistant football and assistant track coach and the athletic trainer for the high school there. And then that summer I was working construction, and one night my phone rang, and it was a friend of mine that I had worked with back when I was a student at the University of Tennessee, and he says, I think I've got a job for you. And I said, well, where is it? What is it? What's the situation? And he had been offered a job at Furman University, but he was didn't want to leave where he was. He recommended me. I was fortunate enough to get the job, and I served a year at Furman. I moved to accept a job at Florida State and was there for 6 or 8 months. And then I went to Mississippi State for 3 years, and I went to Kentucky for 2 years. And the wheels had fallen off of my suitcase by then, and I got to Florida and stayed 48 years. So
wow.
It was a lot of moving, but when it stopped, and it couldn't have stopped in a better place than where I was.
Well, your career and what you do is pretty unique. My dad played in the NFL for 12 years. He was an all-pro linebacker, and this was in the 50s and 60s. And, I noticed that obviously if anybody walked into a football locker room or any locker room of any sport nowadays, men and women, it's just dramatically different than it was in those days. So, why don't you give us a kind of an evolution of the advancement of what you do for both men and women when it comes to athletic training and athletes' health?
Well, you're correct. It's certainly evolved tremendously. Back when I first started, there was only men's athletics, and went through all of those years that I was talking about at Furman, Florida State, Mississippi State, Kentucky, and so forth. It wasn't until I got to Florida, I guess. I came here in '70, and I think it was about 1972 or whatever. I don't know the year exactly, but when we started women athletics, and in those days, the women and you had both gender of sport, but they were not combined, at least not in training rooms and so forth. And uh, it's we had I think seven men's sports when I came here to Florida, and then by the time I left, uh, between the men and the women, there are 20 sports or something of that nature. I think at this point, so it is a big difference, but the educational part of athletic training, or the knowledge that athletic trainers have today as compared to when I started, is just absolutely astounding. Um, the there was no education. It was just all self-taught, or on the job training, or whatever you might want to call it. And most of the athletic trainers at that time, when I got started as a student in the 50s, most of the trainers had been, or a lot of them had been medics in the war, or they had been wounded in the war, and they had an interest in athletics. And when they got out, they ended up giving their time to the athletic teams of whatever school they were going to with the GI Bill or whatever. And um, if you had a well, they were trying to do what they'd been taught while in the military or whatever, and they formed a bond. And if they had a situation uh, that they didn't know how to address or whatever, they would call another, and just swap education by conversation, or swap knowledge um, by conversation. And nowadays it's a situation that you've got to have a doctorate degree or whatever. I'm not exactly how it works, but they're far more educated before they can go in. Uh, when I first got into the athletic training, my education was nothing really. It was basically how to make an ice pack, or put on a heat pack, or tape an ankle or whatever. And I remember one of the first days, uh, they were telling me, said, "Okay, we're going to start practice, and you're going to be responsible. You're going to be the trainer for the freshman team, freshman football team." And so we go to practice, and one of the very first days of two days, uh, we had a young man that was on the far end of the field from where I was, and they told me, said, so and so was down in the far corner. He's gotten stung by a bee, and he's swelling up and turning purple. Well, the young man, in the short time there, had already uh, kind of acquired a reputation of being a hypochondriac or whatever, and that you couldn't really believe what he said or didn't say. But I fortunately uh, went down to check to see what was really going on, and the guy really swelling up and turning purple. I'd never heard of such a thing. Well, we loaded him up in our transport van, and I took him to the student health center, and uh, they told me that had we waited another 5 minutes, he would have been dead. So I learned real quickly that, hey, this is a serious business, and you better pay attention to what's going on. Uh, and uh, we've gone from there, and um, it's been quite a journey. But there's a real difference in the education that we had and the education of today's people, for sure.
Well, I understand that you're a pioneer in this endeavor and athletics and health and training. To the fact that you were there when the University of Florida really launched and made a huge commitment to the women's program, like you mentioned earlier. Tell us about how that came about, because I know that there was Title IX and things like that that obviously encouraged and made women's athletics possible both everywhere, high school and college. But you were part of that transition to where elevating the women's programs into major programs, and obviously with the training that went with it. So tell us about how that came about.
Well, it was through very elementary steps, I guess you would call it. Uh, Obviously, there weren't any women trainers and so forth at that time, and it just so happened that there was a young lady who was the daughter of a salesperson that called on us uh, and, and and selling us some of the supplies and so forth that we used in the training room. And uh, she some way expressed an interest in being involved in whatever. And so, although she was a student, we put her with the women as their trainer, and she was the first one they had. And then um, as she went on up, we had our second trainer was served as the women's basketball coach and the athletic trainer. Eventually, we uh, hired a an athletic trainer with with the sole responsibility of the women's training room, and she didn't have to deal with basketball. She didn't have to deal with going to her academic classes as a student and so forth. So, and then it has grown from there. And I I would imagine that there, well, I don't know. I'm afraid to give a number of the for the women that are here at the university serving as athletic trainers now, but it's in the double digits, I'm sure.
Well, it's absolutely incredible. One of the things I've seen in sports, I've had the good fortune of being a college and high school coach in the world of golf. And even though that those aren't contact sports, but they are sports that deal with a lot of chronic things that go wrong because of the wear and tear on backs and wrists and soft muscles and tissue and that kind of stuff. But what I have noticed is that what you guys have done and gals at the university level has bled down even into the average high school coach to make sure we understand things about heat, exhaustion, and understand, if there's any heart problems going on out there, and have defibrillators. But also more importantly now, and this is why I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, is it's more than just fixing and repairing an injury. It's about the health, and it's about nutrition, and a lot of things where used to be that you, as an athlete in college, you get a per diem and whatever if you're traveling maybe somewhere, and that's it. But now I've lived in Gainesville for about 30 years, and I can tell you I've witnessed the training table. I've been able to get into the training room and visit and see that the various diets that are going on, that you have with athletes now, it's no accident what they put in their bodies. They're just not running down to Burger King every night and getting a double Whopper with cheese. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's certainly become more specialized. There was a time that the athletic trainer was the not only did he or she deal with the injuries or the prevention of injuries and so forth, but they were the equipment manager, they were the strength coach, they were the nutritionist, uh, they were the monitor of the athletic dorms and so forth. Uh, Fortunately, as time has gone on, we've weeded that down to where um, we've got people that specialize in nutrition. We've got people that specialize in handling the equipment room, people that stay in the weight room. So it has certainly um, broadened out and become more specialized. And I just fell off the table.
Hey, that's
Uh,
okay. Hey, this is a casual conversation, and many things can happen. And there's Emily Flood right there, a trainer in her own right. There it is. Hello, Emily. How you
Hello,
doing?
sorry, we're trying to get back online here.
No, that's no problem at all. You're online. We're
Okay,
still
there we
recording. It's good.
all right,
go.
here we go.
Hey, we're
So
back.
we had our athletic trainers specialized in computer work right now at work for us.
Hey, over the years, I know that especially at University of Florida, you've probably encountered quite the characters of the student athletes out there. Is there any particular story or one that stands out in your mind of maybe something funny or something that memorable that you want to pinpoint?
Well, yeah, I've got a story, and I'm the culprit in it. Uh, Back when we had the athletic training room in the uh, underneath the east side of the stadium, um, there was a payphone or whatever right outside of my a few feet down from my office. And one day, my office door was open in this hallway, and my phone rang, and we had a an athlete, Yancey Sutton, who was deaf, and so my phone rings and I answered it, and it's Yancey calling me on the telephone, and I'm having this conversation with a deaf guy, and it turns out that, well, Yancey and Scott Brantley, I think, were roommates, and Scott and Yancey were down there on that payphone, and Scott was kind of listening in to what I was saying and so forth, and then he would tell Yancey what to say to me, and I was made the fool, but it was all in good fun and good time and good memories, and um, we're still close friends, and we still try to have lunch together every couple of months or so.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I know. Kicking around the Ocala area, Scott and Yancey were good golf buddies for a long time. They were pretty active as golfers too, and yeah, and I've met Yancey before, and that's got to be that had to be quite a conversation there. Hey,
It
so
was
what?
enjoyable.
Yeah. So what do you think the future holds for for athletic training and stuff like that? You've got a unique perspective because you've been a pioneer in this all the way up to. And are you still involved? Are you still active in your trade? And or do you and what do you think the future is going to hold for you and this and where athletic training and health is going?
Well, no, I'm not really involved in athletic training anymore. When I retired and walked away. I come over here and visit once in a while, and but no, I when I retired, and I was just looking around in this training room the other day uh, at the size and the of the facility, the equipment that they have in the facility. I don't even have any idea what some of this stuff is, and I can't imagine um, the even even since 2018, when I left the field, there's been tremendous changes in the modalities and the equipment and things that they have to work with and change. Uh, so much in our time, it was ice and heat and imagination and try to use a little psychology to uh, keep the people uh, healthier, well, and on the field.
So, what would you tell a young person that if you were going to mentor somebody, tell a young person that has an interest in this field? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that it is a very fulfilling work. If you really enjoy working uh, with people and trying to help people, uh, the the build everlasting memories with people. Um, Seeing someone overcome the odds of of returning to the playing field whenever they're not supposed, not expected to. Um, the bonds that we have, uh, the advancements of the field, uh, the education. It's I just couldn't have been happier and more pleased than anything else.
Well, that's fantastic. You know what we're going to do? We're going to get you out on this one last question here. And what are you doing nowadays? I know you retired, so are you a golfer, fisherman, bowler, or what do you do in your retirement?
I'm a dog walker,
Okay.
and I had these. I had an idea of what I wanted to do when I retired, and then all of a sudden one day, my wife and daughter told me uh, what I was going to do, and I've been doing it ever since. Uh,
That's
I
great.
was I enjoy horses, and I was hoping and planning to go to one of these retirement homes for horses, and I was going to donate my time there. But my daughter, who is single and had a couple of dogs at that time that needed to be walking, and her job interfered with it, and the dogs were not getting really what they needed at that point, and so I started walking her dogs, and I've still walk them to this day. I walk them in the morning, and then I go back and walk them again in the afternoon, and whatever else I got, I work it in the middle of the day between dog walks. So I uh, I wasn't real keen about it in the beginning, to be honest, but I really love doing it. The dogs are my children now, and it is very fulfilling, as strange as that may sound.
There's a study out there from Sweden, I think, that said that if you play golf, you live 5 years longer. And it's an actual study. They did they did a report on that a few years back. But it sounds like if you're a dog walker, you're going to live 10 years longer.
Well, I tried golf, but my golf game would take 5 years off of my life instead of putting 5 years on.
It's the most infuriating game, the most rewarding game, that's for sure.
It
Well,
sure is.
Chris, it's been a pleasure to have you on the Hall of Fame Conversations, brought to you by Zenny Optical, and you're on the Mic'd Up Social Podcast. So what we're going to do with this podcast is going to go on the Florida Sports Hall of Fame website, and you'll be able to take a look at it and send your friends and family over there to watch it. And we're proud of your enshrinement coming up this fall, October 16th at the Kia Center in Orlando, incoming class of 2024. So on behalf of the Florida Sports Hall of Fame and University of Florida and Chris Patrick, incoming class of 2024 into the Florida Sports Hall of Fame, You've been listening to Hall of Fame Conversations. Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome.